This panel is called Community Rules, Using Gamification to Drive Publishing and Community. And, you know, community obviously is a topic that's near and dear to everybody's heart. You know, we can't really imagine being successful at anything that we've done here in any of the, you know, applications, products, services, or sites that we work on without having a vibrant and viable community to work with. And so, you know, it's important for us to think about how gamification impacts community and how it can be used to that effect. And actually, I'm going to turn this over to Greg Johnson, who's been involved, and I'll let him actually introduce himself to you. He's been involved in the gamification movement in various ways for some time and has a very deep bench on the subject. And Greg, I'll let you know when it's time for some questions from the audience towards the end. So thank you very much, Greg and panel.
Great. Thanks very much, Gabe. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Gabe and his amazing team for pulling this event together. I'm honored to be here and part of it. There's some really great minds, brilliant people around us, and I appreciate that. I was formerly Vice President of Digital Ventures at Playboy Enterprises, where I launched Playboy's first foray into social gaming. So that's kind of the background as to why I'm sitting up here with these guys today, which we're getting ready to kick off a pretty interesting discussion. These gentlemen are clearly the pioneers in the gamification space, so looking forward to hearing their thoughts around some of these multi-part questions. But I'll kick it off by letting you guys go down the line and introduce yourselves, bios, and tell everyone a little bit about why we're all sitting here.
Sure. I'm Jesse Redniss, the head of digital for USA Network. I run the digital properties, social properties, and mobile properties for the hit shows like Burn Notice, Covert Affairs, White Collar, Suits, Necessary Roughness. We got into the gamification space probably about 3 years ago and had our early success with Club Psych, which I know has been showcased as a great case study in taking gamification and integrating in with a television show property. We have thus then moved everything over to some other properties that matched well with the demographics of our shows and have also successfully integrated it across a few other NBCU properties.
I'm Brandon Evans. I'm the founder and CEO of CrowdTap. CrowdTap is the network for brand influencer communities. So we work with major brands to help them really recruit, activate, and reward their influential consumers. We work with brands like Amex, Diageo, Old Navy, and many others across a variety of industries to really help them understand who those people are that can really move the needle for their brand, that want to be engaged deeper both for research and promotion, and really help them understand that community and unlock that community.
I'm Michael Ahern. I work for Major League Baseball Advanced Media. I'm the Associate Director of Fantasy Sports and Gaming. And we're pretty much, I take some pride that baseball as a brand has sort of been at the forefront of using technology to drive user engagement for about a century now, whether it's ticker tapes or radio or television, and whether mobile devices and the web. So we're just continuing that great tradition, and we'll talk some more about what we do as we get on.
My name is Esteban Contreras. I'm the social media marketing manager for Samsung in the United States. And everything that has to do with social, I'm working with and trying to engage with people and create interesting experiences from a marketing perspective. And also doing a lot now with how do we bring that into Samsung.com and our own properties online.
My name is Rajat Paharia. I'm the founder and chief product officer at Bunchball, where, along with Al Gore in 2007, we invented gamification. And I don't think people upstairs know that the session down here is starting, so I apologize for being a little bit late.
All right, great. Welcome, guys. Looking forward to this. So we'll jump right in, and I just want to get some understanding. Based on your experiences, what do you feel are the most effective motivators for increasing and sustaining participation in your communities?
For us, specifically being a television network, each property, each show has been different. It's really about keying in on what the passion points are of that fan base. We found through a lot of experimentation that the Psych fan base was really into signed merchandise. That was the kind of tipping point that really activated them as a kind of a goal to achieve. For some of our other properties, it was access, getting exclusive access to content, the ability to interface directly with talent. Those were some of the, really, kind of shiny objects that the fans really were activated about.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of further that point, I think people are motivated from a variety of things, and our platform, there's a variety of motivators, everything from, incentives for gift cards, charity, brand-specific rewards and access. And what we found in particular is that, some of the more monetary cash-type rewards are good kind of very early on in attracting members, getting them going. But our deep members, our members as they level up in our game, and they get to higher levels, their motivators change to being much more about status, much more being about the competition and the interaction with the brands. So that's kind of the path that we've seen, and we kind of use a variety and a mix at different stages of where the user's at to motivate them.
We have an assortment of fantasy sports games and other types of gamification things, and those do have monetary prizes associated with them, but it's few and far between those who are actually going to win those prizes. One of our signature games is called Beat the Streak, and you're basically picking a hitter each day to get a hit in the historical genre of Joe DiMaggio, and if you're able to sustain a hitting streak for a period, you'll get a prize there. The big one, that one is $5.6 million, but nobody's actually ever won it. So other games, like our traditional sort of rotisserie fantasy baseball game, has a $10,000 prize, and some of those too. But out of like 1 million people or thereabouts, only one will actually win a cash prize, if at all. So what's really driving the engagement there is you're playing with your friends in some sort of group, whether it's in your office pool or you're with your in-laws or whomever, and it's your status as the best baseball fan that's going to put you at the top of your fantasy league or give you the largest streak and that sort of stuff. So I don't see the real rewards as a big motivator for us. It's more the status of being, the top baseball fan in your circle.
I think I'm sorry. Do you want to go ahead? Please.
At Samsung, we're still working on our community. So even though we have experience with Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and these places that can become communities, I don't think they're necessarily communities just because you start a page or something like that. But we're trying to do it in a similar way where we're gearing it towards people that are already passionate, they're already involved. Maybe they're leaving reviews or participating in our Q&As. And so we're definitely gearing it for highlighting and giving a status to those people that are already participating, that are already advocates, and that are excited about our products and what we're doing. The ones that are asking about what kind of products we're going to come out with next, or when is this coming out. And then we're also, at first we weren't sure whether we wanted to do something more tangible. But as we think more and more about who we're gearing it to, then we're realizing that we do want to put some of our products in the hands of some of these people that are very passionate, and it's our way to give back. So that's one of the incentives that we're hoping will bring more people that maybe haven't come in the first place.
I'm going to just answer a slightly different question, which is what gets people back to a website every day? Because I think that's a large component of what can drive community. And I think there's really 4 things that get people back to a website every day. So one is fresh news or content, right? That's why you go to Facebook. That's why you go to Twitter. That's why you go to your favorite news site, TechMeme in my case. The second is some sense of validation. You create something and people have an opportunity to respond, right? And so in any community, if I post my fan art or a comment about the latest episode and somebody responds or says something about it, on Flickr, if I post a photo, on MySpace or Facebook, if I put a status update and people like it or respond, that sense of validation, as I think the previous panel talked about, is hugely gratifying and motivating, and that drives people to come back every day. I mean, we all know people that have made a Facebook status update and then are kind of refreshing the page to see who liked it and who's commented on it, what have they said, right? It's human nature. The third is some sort of loss aversion, right? This is what all the social games use. I have made an investment in my strawberries farm, and I need to come back in 4 hours and harvest, otherwise I lose that. So it's like a penalty for not coming back. Games like Kingdom of Loathing use that too. You get a certain number of moves every day, and if you don't come back, you don't get your moves. And so you feel this sense of loss. And then the third is just kind of time wasters like games, like just come and I just want to play and spend time and socialize. And so those like four, most sites on the internet can fall into that. And the question then is, how can gamification help in those various areas? Can it help create more content? Can it help people comment on each other's stuff more often? Can it implement this loss aversion? Absolutely it can. And can it help you with fresh content? No, not unless you're a user-generated content site. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it.
Interesting, great. So we're thinking about that and using the various mechanics, and how are you guys balancing the use of the various mechanics and the gamification elements throughout your community sites? And then secondarily, what are you using to track sort of the success? What are the sort of key indicators that you're measuring as you're testing those various elements?
I think the thing about communities is that they really are organic beings. They're changing every single day, every single hour. So you really have to be on top of it. There is no real kind of formula to what the balance is. You just really have to be aware of what's happening. You have to keep your kind of ear to the ground of what your community is responding to and what their key points are. Really understand who they are. I think that's really what we're aiming to do, is to entertain and engage with these user bases. So the more you learn who they are and what their trigger points are, the better off the end result will be for you as well as for the end user. I don't know, how does everyone else feel about that?
Well, I mean, in baseball, we have a couple of sort of key games that we have season after season, and periodically we throw out a fresh new game. So we'd like to see what our total user base is, from season to season on our sort of base foundation games. And as we throw out little one-off games, we'd like to see how many people are signing up for those, whether it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands and so forth. Something we've done recently with Big Door is we have a really old product that is called Game Day, and it's basically a way that while you're at work, you can follow a baseball game without actually watching it on television. It's sort of a graphical representation of what's happening on the field. And that's something that has been around since the ticker tape days, not always with a digital representation. But people used to have these big boards in places like Times Square and Union Square, and a ticker tape would come in and somebody would move a peg around a wooden board to help people know what's going on in the game. So you can have this little thing down in the corner of your window on your screen. And we have an editorial staff that will pick 3 players from each side of the matchup. So as an example, if Jeter is the pick of the day and it's a Yankees game, we'll say, hey, if Jeter gets an RBI today while you're watching, and that's the key part, then you'll get what is a Jeter badge, or it's sort of the equivalent of a digital Jeter baseball card. And we've had millions of people actually earn some of these badges, which to me was kind of surprising that the engagement was that high. It's a popular product, and there's been a lot of traffic about it, both in our customer service box and a little bit on some blogs. So that is one way of measuring it. Like we're seeing that the number of badges that are getting rewarded on a day-to-day basis, and just the number of people signing up for new accounts to play games, and how much they come back to pick a player and things like that.
And for us, I mean, I think we have kind of 3 key components, I would say, to our gamification, and they each kind of serve a different purpose. One is just general kind of points and leveling, so that's really the quantitative way of kind of getting through the game. You do stuff, you get that, you move up in status. To kind of gate that, we have a qualitative measure as well. And basically all the activities that people are doing, how they're engaging with brands, the feedback that they're giving, the way that they're sharing content, we're measuring all of that. And when users are participating in a way that's high quality and deriving great value for the brand, they're given points, or quality points, that go to what we call star power. And that star power really gates what they're able to participate in. And if they don't maintain a high star power, they're not able to participate in more activities. They can even be booted from the system. And then kind of the last kind of key component of our game is really kind of a badging and mission system. And that really is kind of more the tutorial and the guide through it. So kind of helping people understand what things to do at each level, what different achievements they can reach to help them drive different behaviors. And I think the 3 of those things work very well together for us in driving kind of the optimal behavior.
Gamification for us is really one of many initiatives that we started for the purpose of increasing engagement with which people always throw out there, but for us it's something very clear. It's a combination of things that we measure as things that are engagement, which can be things like submitting comments, submitting reviews. So we really started with that objective. Gamification is one of the things that we're using to try to drive that and increase that. And so how we're going to measure success is ultimately whether all those actions and behaviors that we wanted to encourage actually increased or not. And so right now we're testing as if the system was there, just to see how would people be engaging if our community or program was already out there. And it's not, but we're trying to find out, okay, this is how much people are doing. And so that when we launch, we have a baseline and we can track from then, and hopefully it'll work. But we're still there working on this, and hopefully we'll be launching soon.
One of the more interesting things we've seen people do recently is kind of this more collective action and team-based thing. So like Greg, for instance, at Playboy ran a program called Miss Social that enlisted young women who aspired to be Playboy models to build teams, be the generals of their own little armies, to recruit them to help them win this monthly competition called Miss Social on Facebook. Jesse had a program called Campus Wars, where he used the notion of teams that were universities that wanted to get a mention in an upcoming episode of Psych. And so people not only competed for themselves or by themselves, but they worked together collaboratively with their university to get the most points. And in this case, Brigham Young University actually won the title. Bravo TV has done the same thing with Top Chef, a competitive cooking show where it was kind of like a second chance competition, virtual Top Chef, and you not only earned for yourself, but you earned for your team, and you had a team page, and you competed internally within the team to see who could be, the biggest fan of Richard Blaze or Fabio. The teams competed against each other, but then you were also working collaboratively to hit certain milestones. Can the team collectively do X? In a recent Salesforce.com app that my company built, we have can your team close $1 million in business this quarter? And if they can, then everybody on the team gets a reward. So this notion of kind of collaborative action, I think, is really powerful because no one wants to be the one that lets down the team, right? And so if you can take that peer pressure and apply it, you can drive really meaningful results.
Interesting. So one of the things I'd love to hear also are, as you guys are in various stages of implementing your programs, what are some of the kind of pitfalls or the gotchas that you've discovered over time that will be helpful for the audience as they're preparing their audience engagement strategy? What just things to look out for?
I mean, one thing I'd say, and this is more of an Uber thing, is especially with brands. The reason really CrowdTap was created, and it was based off kind of a platform I developed in the past. It was more of a walled garden approach where you set up a private community over here for a brand, and you hope you have enough engagement to keep people active. And really, what we've noticed is really no brand has really enough going on, enough incentives. The game isn't big enough for the most part to kind of warrant that. So I think a trap a lot of brands fall into is trying to create enough to do and enough content, because you really need people logging in extremely regularly. You need the game and the status to mean a lot from an Uber level to really get the behaviors that you want. So what CrowdTap does is we have kind of an Uber game across a variety of brands, so we know kind of how members are participating in a variety of activities. They're able to participate in multiple different things, and it keeps them active over time. So I think when you're setting up, and how you're thinking about gamification, there's a lot of different ways to do it, whether it's part of some other network that already exists, whether there's some other solution. I think before you kind of jump in and kind of build kind of your own thing over here, it's kind of important to really think about what is the content, what's the reason that they're here, what are we providing of value for this community, and does it make sense for us to kind of go at that alone?
Yeah, I think the biggest pitfall is don't do it just because everyone else is doing it. I mean, you really have to know who your user base is, understand what their passion points are, and figure out how you can path them through an overall experience to make it worth it for you as well as for them. That's really kind of like the biggest pitfall that you need to avoid. Once you avoid that and you figure out, all right, there is something there that I can provide to my users and to my community, then again, it's customizing it to those efforts and then being able to sustain that, being able to come up with that content every single day or week or whatever your average visits are per month for a user, and then making sure that all the content, the stuff is compelling. So, badges, they're really not that compelling to all the users that we have at USA and some of the other NBCU properties. What's compelling to them is video content, merchandise, access to talent. So knowing what we want to offer up front and basically kind of putting it out there to the user base and being able to modify on the fly, being able to iterate over and over again and not just launch a product and walk away from it.
So I suppose one of our early pitfalls, if you will, is a little bit too much success and setting user expectations. So fantasy baseball and those types of sports have been around for decades, and we've had a pretty good success for that. So in this last year, we introduced the notion of these sort of virtual baseball cards or badges associated with player names. And it was our first year in that sort of space. We didn't know how successful it would be. We didn't know how frequently players within the context of this game day app that I discussed would actually do whatever it was that the editorial staff put out there as Jeter getting an RBI in today's game, that kind of stuff. And it actually drove millions and millions of badge rewards. So that was super successful. And then what happened was we started seeing some tweets and blog posts about, okay, so now I've got a certain number of these badges, and what can I do with them? I mean, can I turn them in for some sort of coupon or get a hat or a jersey or that kind of stuff? And we had initially, in the early stages, decided in our first year not to do any sort of real world sort of prizes, and that all that would really be is a badge or a baseball card, which is a notion that's been around since all of our childhoods and even our grandparents' childhoods. So that was kind of odd for us. We didn't anticipate that people would expect to be able to convert them into something else. And we are thinking that perhaps at some point down the road that might happen, maybe not, we don't know yet. But it was interesting to see that the users instantly, or not instantly, but fairly early on, had some level of expectation of conversion. And for us, with the substantial user base that we have, the financial and other legal and other types of liabilities associated with conversion was something that we wanted to avoid until we explored the space a little bit more thoroughly. So that was a sort of eye-opening thing for me to see that how quickly people wanted to convert whatever it was they got from a virtual to a non-virtual product.
Something that we've learned from just social media marketing in general is that you always have to have this always-on approach. So several years ago, people thought that creating a website, creating a Facebook page was enough. But if you don't have content there every day, if you're not responding, if you don't realize that people are going to throw every kind of question at you, then it's not going to be a meaningful experience. So even though we haven't launched our gamification project, we're definitely looking at it as we know that we have to design this well, and we know that it has to have a bit of an always-on approach so that it evolves and it gets better, and we keep adding more of what people like and keep surprising people. We really want to be as far away from other implementations as possible so that people find it unique and special and custom for Samsung fans, as opposed to anybody that that likes points or badges or leaderboards or something of that sort.
I think the number one problem with a lot of gamification efforts and pitfalls is not providing meaningful value to the end user. So kind of to riff on Jesse's point, we all either implicitly or explicitly, anytime we engage with any system, we're asking kind of what's in it for me. And a lot of these systems don't provide a good answer for that. Badges, as Jesse said, only go so far for a lot of people. So some good examples, like Foursquare is actually a great example, right? Foursquare is like the double-edged sword. It's actually the gamification in Foursquare is a wonderful customer acquisition and onboarding tool, right? On day one, they have no data in the system, they have no discounts, they have no city guide information, they have no value, but they still need you to press the button. How do they get you to press the button? They use game mechanics, and they say you can be the mayor, you can get points, you can get badges. And so it gets you into the system, but then 3 weeks later, you're going okay, now this game is boring, because there's nothing to do, after I'm the mayor. And so what else is this system going to provide me? And so the game mechanics themselves cannot provide longevity. You need to have some core experience there already. You need to provide some meaningful value. So the challenge for Foursquare now is, what is the meaningful long-term value that they provide? Is it discounts? Is it meet hot singles nearby? Is it city guide? What is it? It has to have something, because the game mechanics, while in this case used incredibly well for onboarding, did not have a long-term meaningful value to the end user. And so that's the key thing that I would caution everybody on, is like, think really hard, put yourself in the shoes of the user. What is meaningful to your end user, and provide that, because if you don't, then the system will fall flat.
That's great. So before I turn questions over to the audience, what would be the one piece of advice that you would like to give the audience as they're, preparing to leverage their gamification efforts as a takeaway here?
I think one of the things that we really didn't touch upon yet was how to bring your efforts social. I think that's one of the biggest keys to really seeing huge success. When we first launched our product on Club Psych, we integrated in Facebook Connect, yes, and we integrated in Twitter, so basically you can push out your status and show what you had just completed. It wasn't until we actually migrated the entire platform over to the Facebook Canvas pages where we saw massive growth happen. So, when you're building this, don't look at building your property or your offering in a silo in which you're trying to drive people just exclusively to this destination. Think about how you can syndicate it out everywhere so that people can access it no matter where they are, so that they can get to it from Facebook, where there's already 750 million people that they can share it with their average of 200 friends, I think is what Facebook says they have an average of. That's where you're going to start to see some real traction and some real word-of-mouth marketing happening on your behalf from your user bases.
Yeah, I think I touched on it a lot with the last answer, but really, think about kind of the meaningful context of that you're putting your, the user in. What do you ultimately want to get from them, and think about, the time and the effort and how they, are going to participate with that, and figure out what are you meaningfully giving back to the community, and I'd make sure that is enough. And that if you're talking about a brand, that you have enough content, enough for them to do, or think about how you can kind of work within, kind of other systems that really allows the user to be part of a context that's meaningful for them to participate on an ongoing basis, and that has reason for them to come back frequently, or has reason for them to value the status that you're giving them, and has enough incentives that keep the member feeling valued and feeling like there's a reason to be there.
I'm going to agree with both of them to some extent. We certainly already have the engagement and the content. There's just hundreds and hundreds of baseball games a month, so people keep coming back for that. We have already had a large enough user base that we didn't necessarily engage with Facebook on a moment-to-moment basis in the way that he was mentioning. But we certainly want to and want to bring Facebook in as a part of that. But it wasn't an absolute necessity for us. But we're a unique brand that's been around for a century and has an enormous user base already. But it's on a very specific example. If I want that Jeter baseball card, I'm going to come back to the app whenever there's a Yankee game. And that's the driving content that's bringing people back to our app and collecting more and more of whatever cards it is. And the same is true with the other fantasy sports. So we've got the content, we've got the larger base, and it's just finding a way to sort of tickle people's interest and keep them coming back. And so far, so good. So, but I would say what I did and I recommend is I started a little slow. First with some fantasy sports badging, and then with some other types of badging, and keep an eye on what's working and what's not working. And so we've been lucky so far, and it's been going well for us. But you don't have to jump in, all at once. You can start with little things and learn as you go.
Yeah, I'd say just make sure that I think you said this earlier, but that this is something that's valuable for your visitors, your customers, or your users, and make sure that whatever it is that you're trying to increase or get them to do are things that are kind of valuable on their own. Because if you just get people to click the button, there's enough slides on SlideShare and videos on YouTube of people that criticize gamification as a whole. So I've become very familiar with all of those criticisms so that our customers don't come and criticize what we're creating, but instead that they find it unique and interesting and fascinating, and in the end that it's something that they actually can say fun, because game mechanics doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be fun, and I think that's a key element in there that doesn't just come in because you have game mechanics as part of the solution or the community that you're creating?
I'd say to understand really well the key business metrics you're trying to drive, how you're going to measure any sort of change in those business metrics, make sure that that measurement is instrumented from day one so there's no questions about it, and then what the key success metrics are going to be. How are you going to know whether this stuff actually worked?
Great. Thanks, guys. I think we have a few minutes, Gabe. Can we turn it over to the audience?
Hello, my name's Bill Ferguson. I'm with Marianne Liebert Publications, and I wanted to make a comment on the title of your panel, and that you talked a great deal about the virtual community, and I just wanted to make a comment about the publishing aspect of your panel, and that is that although only about 3 or 4% of the gamification activity is related to health and well-being, we feel that it's such a large growing market and that there are so many potential applications for games for health and well-being that we are launching a peer-reviewed journal. And it's simply because we feel that it's a vast and growing area that a lot of people have already expressed interest in us in. And so the publishing side, both electronic and paper, is trying to become a part of this community as well. Thank you.
That's great. And just, on two different aspects of that. On the publishing side, Reading.com, a local newspaper website that's part of the Scripps Network, just went live with a gamification system that the whole goal is to increase the quality of the discourse in the comments. That's the whole thing. It's not like a loyalty program or anything else. It really is about civil discourse. And it's really interesting. It's kind of this reputation insight system. I'd encourage you all to go check it out, Reading, REDDING.com. So in the publishing industry, I think those guys are actually doing something very forward-thinking. It was just written up in Neiman Labs. And then on the health and wellness side, there's a company called Hope Lab that's based in Redwood City. It's a nonprofit, and they have a device called the Zamzi. Gabe might even have a Zamzi he can hold up if he's tracking it. And these guys are trying to combat tween obesity. And so they have an activity monitor that the kids can plug on to their belts and run around all day. And at the end of the day, they come and they plug it in, and it uploads all their activity data. And for every 10 minutes they've spent in a certain activity zone, they earn points, ZAMs. And then they can take those and use them to buy virtual goods or to buy Amazon gift cards or donations to charity. And they've been able to show a 30% increase in activity amongst these tweens, which is the equivalent of them running an extra marathon every month. And so now they're spinning this out into a commercial entity called Zamzi.
I'm just thinking of Mashable Follow, which is, to me, it's a really good attempt at getting people to find out about specific topics on Mashable and follow specific people. They have some badges on there, and they also make it really easy to share. So to me, the drive to be part of Mashable Follow is to get to know some of the people in Mashable and also to be able to easily share, which to me is the most important part of it. But it just kind of fits within the blog.
Within the space of publishing, MLB certainly has a lot of blogs and also a lot of articles that get commented on. At some point in whatever future, there may be some gamification associated with that. We haven't decided yet. But that's another place where we could look for contributing to a healthy discourse. Some of it's around athletics, of course, and baseball, obviously, but that's one angle that you could take there. And you could do that in whatever publishing framework you'd like. I think that's whatever the news might be about, whether it's sports or baseball or any other topic.
Yeah, so we actually, there's going to be a Forrester report, about a 12-page case study that's going to come out next week on the Club Psych initiative specifically. which goes very deep into the overall effects of what this program had across not only viewership of the show, but it drove increased ad sales revenue, because if you look at the basic formula of putting ad banners onto a page, if you're increasing overall page view generation for more user participation, you can of course put more ads on those pages. One of the most interesting stats that came out of this was the fact that while we were giving away real merchandise, we basically bought 5,000 pieces of our own merchandise, provided those as real world goods to give away. About 47% of the people that went in to redeem their free piece of merchandise also bought something while they were in the store. So it basically doubled our overall merchandise sales for that season of the show. That was kind of a big aha moment, like, wow, we didn't really expect that to happen. We didn't really even foresee that happening. But it's not a formula that we're just going to plug into every single initiative we're doing. It was just a fantastic after effect that happened. Overall, the initiatives around Club Psych 2 also basically had a halo effect that spread out into Facebook, into Twitter, where people are now talking about effective social reach. Where I mentioned that 200 number earlier, where there's, every person on Facebook has an average of 200 friends. As soon as you put something into your stream, your 200 friends can see that. There's about 25% click-through rate of some of the posts that are going into the stream, if they're interesting posts that are going in there. And for us, when we really started seeing that growth is when we went over onto the Facebook side. So for us, it was real word-of-mouth marketing that also included tuning in for our show. So when we targeted a certain demographic during that college initiative that Rajat was speaking of, we actually saw an increase in the 18 to 34 demographic of people watching the show. So there really were multiple effects that happened around the gamification efforts that, yes, gamification was coupled with different marketing efforts, different promotional tactics, different street teams, and different advertising being in the space. But as a whole, the entire campaign lifted viewership too. So we were really able to see a lot of different successes happening from this.
Yeah, and speaking for our brand clients, I mean, one of the things we do pretty diligently is really try to, we measure the brand equity pyramid very closely, both before and after programs, and really look deeply at a lot of the metrics, a lot of marketers use to determine, kind of ROI of various programs, and we've seen, tremendous lifts in, kind of purchase intent and in particular brand advocacy aspects of that pyramid. To the point where it's hard for many of our clients to kind of believe the level of lifts, but I think a lot of that's really attributed to when consumers are really able to kind of be that involved with the brand, to feel like they have a direct connection, to feel like they can actually influence where the brand's going and are part of the actual activities that are going on, they form an extremely close connection to those brands, and we found that to be extremely powerful. And kind of one of the other things that we do track with some of our clients where we're able to do so is kind of coupon or store redemptions, and the rates that we've had are extremely above kind of what our clients are typically used to achieving. So I think as much as we can track direct to store, obviously we try to do so, but I think kind of looking at things like the brand equity pyramid are very interesting in this context, because you are forming such deep relationships with consumers.
Even though I lead a technology group, the real sort of gist of what we're about and my little group is about is driving sort of more an expansion of the fan base. And there's a lot of different fantasy products out there that have nothing to do with us directly, Major League Baseball. Yahoo has a very successful fantasy sports site, CBS Sports, ESPN, and so forth. And so those people, in a strange way, are promoting our brand for us, as well as their own, and the cost of the service and development and so forth, the onus of that is on them. So we don't want to cannibalize that help that they're giving us, if that's an interesting way to look at it. What we want to do is expand the entire pie of baseball fans. So the games that I put together tend to be, for the newer baseball fan, they're a little bit easier. They're either quicker in terms of, hey, just pick a batter for today, and there's certain components to the design of our rotisserie style game that simplify it. I don't mean to say dumb it down, but just make it a little bit easier for the newer fan. So one thing is, if we see those numbers coming up, then that's great, and we know that we're definitely not attracting the we're not designing the games for the hardcore religious baseball fan, and believe me, there are plenty of those out there. So we want to expand that pie. We don't necessarily have the ability to track that if that new fan went to a baseball game and bought a hat from a street vendor outside, that there's a direct correlation there. So some of it you can't really measure, and the technology's not there yet, there for that. But I can see that our numbers are up. I can also see that there are millions and millions and millions of visitors that come to baseball every day, and we break them down into two groups. There's those who are registered on the site and or Facebook connected, and those who are just coming by to check out a box score or something like that, and who aren't registered. But I have on occasion run some database queries, and I've seen that nearly half of the registered users who come to MLB.com are also registered to play some of the fantasy games, one or more of the fantasy games. So that's a pretty substantial percentage of the registered traffic that's coming through the site. And in some ways we can measure who of those go on to then purchase maybe video streams and things like that. But not all of it can be exactly measured, but we're really just about increasing brand awareness and engaging people in the sport of baseball. And so far that we seem to be pretty successful at that with the various numbers that we get in various games and registrations.
So with that, I just want to thank the panel, and Greg, your moderator, thank you so much.